was 22 years old. Yes, 22 and a half, actually.
Hello. With flight 901 was lost mid-afternoon today. The aircraft had 257 people on board, including 20 crew.
Today's flight was last heard from about 2:30 in the afternoon. At that stage, it was in the area of Mount Erebus, an active 4,000-metre volcano.
Air New Zealand announced it had given the plane up as lost. The airline's chief executive, Mr. Maury Davis, feared the worst.
Like everyone else in New Zealand, it was just absolutely just disbelief that I felt, and also a creeping sense of foreboding that in some form or another I may have been involved in assisting, but never really thinking that I would be.
But have you any possible explanation of this?
No, we don't.
There were heartbreaking scenes at Auckland Airport. Relatives arriving to meet passengers on the Antarctic flight were hustled away to a side room. There they received the dreadful news that the flight was long overdue and that the plane had almost certainly crashed.
Now I, like the rest of New Zealand, was in shock. We'd had a training day that very day at National Police Headquarters for the Disaster Victim Identification Team. And of course, there was a feeling coming through, even during that training, that when would we ever use this? But little did we know that it was going to occur that very day.
The worst disaster of any kind in New Zealand history.
Surely they wouldn't send us to the coldest region in the world, to the Antarctic. I mean, I'd never been on snow or ice before.
Well, just a few moments ago, we received news that they'd located the wreckage of the DC-10. He reported it was about 2,500 feet up Mount Erebus, which is the largest mountain in the Antarctic, and regrettably he reported no sign of survivors.
We got the news, I think about 1 o'clock it was confirmed that the wreckage had been found. We were fielding calls from people all over the world who wanted to know, what's going on, is my loved one involved. It was just go, go, go. And uniformed staff had been drafted in from across the street, and everyone was answering phones and trying to answer questions. We didn't really have a great deal of information.
Stuart Layton? Yes, sir.
21 years flying service with Air New Zealand.
I understand, sir, but
Ano na mo, ma?
This was his first flight.
thank you, sir.
Ang
The Airline Pilots Association praised
Ang?
his ability, and they had asked him to be their
Sige, dapat tayo mo.
technical director.
Looks like it's all on.
What do they want you to do?
Go out there, find,
Murag energy.
identify, and retrieve the bodies.
Di ba mura siyang energy?
Was
Ang
one
lasa?
of 5 sisters of all being stewardesses for Air New Zealand. She was Sue Maranova, one of the organisers of the recent trip to Disneyland for handicapped and underprivileged children.
Di mo man yan palagi araw-arawin. Paki-close. Paki-close. Thank you.
Within 15 minutes, I then had to make some urgent phone calls to my parents.
Yeah, it's me.
My father answered the phone, and before I even said a word, he says, "You're going, aren't you?"
I gathered some warm jerseys that I had, old jerseys, and went and said goodbye to my children. I genuinely wondered whether I would see them again.
I'll be back before you know it. Off you go.
We were very, very apprehensive. You had staff that were expert in their own fields in terms of search and rescue, and there were a number of mountaineers, and then an untried DVI team who'd never ever used those procedures in anger before.
Yeah, well, no, we're the airline.
And so therefore you're having to wonder how you're going to work together. No one from the teams had been down to the ice before, so we had absolutely no idea what Antarctica was going to throw at us. We just knew it would be dangerous.
I was actually feeling quite apprehensive. I realised that this was a career-defining opportunity, but also it carried the consequence if I messed it up. If I stuffed this up, I'm history. I didn't actually do any of the selection process, and I think that in hindsight probably Stu was too young. For those sort of jobs you need somebody, a cop with miles on the clock, and Stu didn't have it. But I knew Greg from way back, and I was pretty confident that he would be able to handle it.
How you going? I'm gonna need a good man to keep us on track at the coalface while I run things from McMurdo. No problem.
We knew we had a job to do, and I was prepared to do it, but I was concerned about safety, about not only my safety, and the other police officers.
There was a feeling on myself of disbelief of actually being on the plane and heading down that way, saying, "Oh, I am going down there. We're on the way."
This was a huge disaster. I knew that, a huge disaster, and I knew it was going to be an awful job, but it was still exciting. We didn't really know what had happened to the plane. We knew it had crashed into a mountain somewhere in the Antarctic. I couldn't even visualise the crash scene at that time.
You never think it could happen to one of ours, do you? No. No, you don't.
As I travelled down to the ice, it was a time of contemplation, thinking about what lay ahead, thinking about those who had died. I mean, the whole country was in mourning, and we were the same. As we drew near to McMurdo, the captain of the Hercules drew our attention to Mount Erebus. And there in the distance was a slight smudge on the side of the mountain.
Oh my God, bro.
The reality of it hit home that here was a big, huge airliner which had disintegrated. All it looked like was a little cigarette smudge on the side of the mountain. And that was a very, very moving moment.
Good God, it's in the middle of nowhere. There was nothing. There was a huge mountain, just snow and rock, and a bit of smoke coming out the top. It's really, and there was nothing.
You're all very apprehensive about what you're going to encounter down on the ice, and think about what you were letting yourself in for. I knew I was going into danger, absolutely. There's nothing worse than the fear of the unknown. And we were heading into the unknown.
Peter, welcome to the Madhouse. As an accident investigator, I felt let's get on and find out what had happened and gone wrong. Pack your bags and go to Christchurch tomorrow.
I thought you were heading off to the ice.
Just here to pick up 901's flight plan. Been any news?
We'll figure it out.
I was told by Air New Zealand that I was going to join the investigation team at the request of the Airline Pilot Association and also the Inspector of Air Accidents. All sorts of wild ideas. People were in just total disbelief. I thought that something has gone horribly wrong for a crew that I had known in the Air Force and had a reputation in Air New Zealand of being cautious, well-trained, always planned their flights well. What on earth would have caused them to run into a mountain? Air New Zealand flight operations staff trying to work out, like we all were, what on earth's gone wrong.
How significant? Just 2 degrees of longitude. Okay. Jesus.
We had one meeting at the Air New Zealand offices, and as far as we were led to understand at that stage as the whole team, they had no information as to what might have been a probable cause.
All right, men. Let's go.
We thought, well, we're now going to get off the plane in Antarctica. And so we all put all this great big heavy weather Antarctic gear on, and we were a bit like the Michelin men. I thought you'd open the door and there'd be snow blowing, and there'd be winds howling. It would be just like a blizzard.
Hey guys, welcome to Antarctica.
And there was
Yeah.
this most wonderful day, the bright
No, I'm
blue
doing
sky.
something. Oh.
An American commander was there with his sleeves rolled up. So
Yeah,
that was
yeah.
our first lesson, is that, you know, you don't know what you don't know. So I think we were
But I'm
a
also
little
doing
bit
something else in the
overdressed.
back.
Very pleased to meet you, Jim. Hey, long flight. Let's
I
have
am
a
watching,
conversation
but I am
about
also
food
doing
and
something
tea.
else in the back.
They were very helpful. They said to me, if we got it, you want it, you got it. Everything, anything we wanted, if they had it, it was ours. And they couldn't have been more generous, more helpful.
We were under a lot of stress. The sea ice was breaking up. We expected the sea ice to break up within about a week of us arriving there. And once the sea ice broke up, we knew that the Hercules couldn't land. They couldn't take the bodies back to New Zealand.
You are about to go out into the most inhospitable place on the planet. If you don't know what you're doing, the results can be deadly and immediate.
I was worried that when we got up onto the mountain that we wouldn't be able to handle it. And cops being cops, if something can go wrong, it will.
Mountaineers are up at the wreckage site right now, marking it with flags. This is why you're here, gentlemen. Green flag means a body or portion thereof. Bodies will be frozen. They might be buried in the snow or hidden in crevasses. Red flag means a crevasse. Don't fall in. Easy to say, hard to do. I know you've got a big job. I don't envy you as much.
Those 2 or 3 days before we went to the mountain were very trying. There was uncertainty of what we were going to face. This is got nothing to do with the body recovery. I thought I could cope with that without any problems. But I was just concerned about the conditions.
Scattered around the site are a couple hundred of these little fellas. They might have been damaged on impact or in the fire. They might explode.
You're right, mate.
Safety is the first priority.
You've been on the snow before.
You're unsure, walk away.
It's mostly just common sense. You'll be okay. Yeah.
We had no doubts in our mind. We were in an absolute survival situation. Or you're wondering, oh, do we really need to be here? Do the bodies really need to be recovered? Is this beyond our capabilities? And some people were of the view that it was.
Are you sure we're the guys for the job? This is serious stuff.
We're here now, Greg. We're committed.
We're completely untrained for this environment.
Greg and I had a conversation, and he said, you know, this is madness. He said, we've got no business being here. We don't know, we're not mountaineers, because we're all street cops.
I was concerned, there's no doubt about that. I was genuinely concerned about... I envisaged us hanging onto the side of a mountain, and never having been in snow or ice before, I thought, this is madness.
We can make it work. I can run the site with you, mate. Double shift sort of thing. Yeah, it could work.
Good on you, mate.
Can I get a show of hands from the DVI team? Who has had some survival training in the snow? Yep. All right, Stuart, down on your haunches. On your back.
And so the decision was made to have us assessed as to our capabilities. We're learning to walk in snow and then on ice.
Just concentrate on the technique. Keep that in your mind.
They would lay us on our backs.
Don't panic, you'll be fine. All right, you set? All right, guys, let them go.
And just let you go. It just really dug into us that we were going into. This is not a game. This is no joke. This was serious. It was life-threatening, and we had to be prepared to survive and be disciplined to survive in that type of environment.
We were the first officers to head to the mountain. As we neared the mountain, it was shrouded in mist and fog, and the helicopter pilot couldn't find the crash site. Then there was a sudden clearance, and he dropped straight down.
It was quite clear that the pilot was not 100% confident to go in and actually land on the mountainside.
All right! This is where we get off! Is he going to land? Because of the weather conditions, the pilot's going to maintain a hovering position! Outside of the ground!
Because of the prop wash from the rotor blades. Everything was white, and so you just had to jump into a white void and have faith.
As the junior boy, I was the last one on, and consequently the first one out. I was extremely apprehensive. What am I going to see? How am I going to cope with what I'm going to see? Will I be able to do the job that I'm asked to do? Because you just don't know. No one's experienced it before. and it's the fourth biggest air disaster in the world at that time.
The sight that greeted us was just, it was unbelievable, really. The experience I'd had dealing with death and that, really you couldn't prepare for what we saw. It was just a scene of utter destruction, both human and aircraft. It was overwhelming to see so many fellow New Zealanders, human beings and others, other persons from other countries also lying there. It was hard. It was hard to take.
It was horrific. The whole area was covered with bodies, and they were mangled, and the whole thing was just a shambles. It was the worst sight that I'd seen.
There's a lot of mutilation, a lot of bodies. It was just grotesque, and it was just overwhelming. I personally felt a little bit out of my depth. I couldn't walk with the other two. I just had to be alone with my own thoughts, and I also had the feeling I don't belong here. This is quite foreign. What am I doing here? You know, it's this is for where the big boys are.
Take it one step at a time, Stu.
And you just suck it up and you say, this is reality, this is it.
You want to watch something else?
It's just gone 2 a.m. How are you feeling? We can do this.
It's okay, love.
Yeah.
Bob Mitchell had to return to McMurdo to coordinate the operation from there. Stu Layton and myself had to busy ourselves because the rest of our team hadn't arrived. And Stu and I were the only two there.
Should do it. We should hurry up. Starving. No sign of a chopper. Should be here shortly. Think it'll be a bit of weather. Let's go.
We'd only been on the mountain a short while, and we were soon to learn how quickly the weather could change.
There was lots of light, metal lying around, and the wind would pick this stuff up and it would just fly around in the wind. And you know that you're on the slope of a mountain and you're thinking, is this tent going to stay? Is it going to be blown away? Are we going to be rolling down the side of the mountain? It was absolutely frightening, the strength and force of these winds.
I can honestly say that I was wondering whether we were going to survive, and I was praying. I remember it.
I thought, my goodness, if this is the way that it's going to continue routinely and this is the way it's going to be, I don't know whether we're going to get out of this. And that's when I had my first serious doubts of whether we were going to get out of that alive. It's continuous 24-hour sunlight. It's quite an unusual, disorientating sort of feeling. The campsite was right next to the actual crash site itself. And one of the first things that was built when I was there was an actual helicopter landing pad. And we'd built a snow toilet, an igloo. And we'd carved a little bench and a little wee hole, you know, just like the outside dunnies. Some perfume from the aircraft we found and we put that in there. Yeah, it was very effective.
Right, good reference point here. This is the tail fuselage up on the side. Now, grid 1-1, obviously, is down the bottom here, and we're going to be working across the mountain. So left to right, that way we're not going to go up and down all the time.
The crash site itself, it was awesome to look at. And I must say, I did have a moment of dread there because the moment of truth was getting closer for me to get stuck into this DVI procedure. So yes, I was probably a bit nervous at that point.
Okay, and with that in mind, be really careful of all these jagged bits of metal we've got all over the place. There's a lot of hazards, so just watch yourself, okay guys?
How are we doing?
Yeah, good, good. We'll have 4 teams, 4 men to a team comprising of 2 police, a mountaineer and a photographer, and they'll rotate continuously. 2 teams on, 2 teams off, 12-hour shifts.
I'll run my shift. You got here first, you guys take the first shift.
Fine.
Greg was on-site coordinator when Greg was there. I was on-site coordinator when Greg left. And yeah, so I was in charge of it, and I had to make sure that the thing ran properly.
Now the sites are grids marked by the black flags. I've marked them here on this map. Now each grid has to be signed off before moving on to the next.
What about when it's just parts of one?
No, fair point. Each body part gets its own tag. Any questions? All right. Go.
I felt like I had a responsibility, and I was determined to get it moving.
Bag ready?
And everyone had the right attitude. It was a real New Zealand attitude. Let's get this job done.
2, 3. Go. Take one to the other side, mate.
There were some horrendous sights. Decapitated bodies, there were people torn apart, there was guts, there was brain. It was just awful.
The bodies went